Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back to a time when the streetlights came on and everyone knew it was time to head home, when neighbours borrowed sugar and actually returned it, when the milkman knew your family by name and Saturday morning smelled like fresh cut grass and possibility. We're talking about 1950s American suburbs, specifically what they felt like when they were at their very best. The tree-lined streets where children played kick the can until dusk, where mothers traded recipes over backyard fences, and where fathers washed cars on Sunday afternoons while radios played softly through open windows. Before we dive in, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these quiet trips through time, and a heartfelt thank you to the viewer who suggested this topic. Your ideas truly shape this channel, and I'm grateful for every single one. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. I know someone out there is listening at 2:37 a.m, wrapped in blankets, letting nostalgia wash over them like a gentle wave. And speaking of listening, the channel is now live on Spotify, so if you'd like to take these stories with you wherever you go, the link is waiting in the description below. Now dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soft white noise breeze, wiggle down under your blanket and get comfortable. Really comfortable. Like you're settling into a memory you can almost touch. Because tonight, we're exploring what life felt like when suburbs were new, optimistic, and filled with the kind of community that seems harder to find now. A world where front porches meant something, where everyone recognized the sound of their neighbor's car pulling into the driveway, and where summer evenings stretched on forever, warm and golden and safe. Have you ever wondered what a Tuesday morning actually felt like in 1955? What did the hardware store smell like when you walked in? What did families actually do on Sunday afternoons before television dominated every living room? How did it feel to walk to school without anyone worrying? What did the neighborhood sound like at dinner time when every kitchen window was open? What was it like when milk was delivered in glass bottles and the paper boy knew exactly where to toss your morning news? Did people really leave their doors unlocked, or is that just nostalgia smoothing the edges? And could you survive a single week in a world that moved slower, demanded less, but expected you to show up for your neighbours in ways we rarely do now? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1955. The coffee is already percolating. Someone down the street is mowing their lawn. The paperboy just tossed the morning edition onto your front porch, and the day is just beginning. Let's start with the morning, when sunlight filters through kitchen curtains and the house begins to stir with gentle purpose. The alarm clock rings sharp and metallic, not the soft chime of a phone, but a real bell that rattles on your nightstand like a tiny emergency. You reach over and silence it with a practice slap, and the house settles back into that brief, precious quiet before the day truly begins. The bedroom is cool, the sheets are crisp, and somewhere downstairs you can already smell coffee brewing, that rich, earthy scent that means your mother or your wife has beaten you to the kitchen and started the day before the rest of the world even knows it's awake. You lie there for just a moment longer, eyes adjusting to the soft morning light that spills across the ceiling in a pale yellow stripes. The house creaks gently as it warms, small, settling sounds that feel like the building itself is stretching after a long night's rest. Outside your window, you hear the first stirrings of the neighborhood, a car door closing softly, the distant bark of a dog, the whir of someone's sprinkler already starting its rotation across a lawn that needs tending before the day gets too hot. The floorboards are cool beneath your feet as you stand, and you reach for the robe hanging on the back of the door, wrapping it around yourself against the morning chill that hasn't quite burned off yet. The bathroom mirror shows your face still creased from the pillow, hair standing at odd angles, and you splash cold water that shocks you into fuller wakefulness. The towel is rough and clean, sun-dried yesterday and folded, precisely by hands that take pride in these small domestic rituals. Downstairs, the kitchen glows with early light. Your mother stands at the stove, still in her housecoat, hair already pinned back neatly, stirring oatmeal in a pot that sends up small puffs of steam. The coffee pot percolates on the counter, that distinctive burbling sound that means morning has officially arrived, and she pours you a cup without asking, knowing exactly how you take it, because she's poured this same cup 1,000 times before. The coffee is strong and hot, and you wrap both hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into your palms. The radio on the counter plays softly, morning news mixed with big band music, and your father sits at the table already dressed for work, newspaper spread before him, glasses perched on his nose. He grunts a greeting without looking up, and you know this means good morning. It's going to be a fine day. I'm glad you're here. The language of morning is often silent, communicated in gestures and routines that need no explanation. This is how the day begins in 1955. Not with alarms blaring from phones, not with the anxious scroll through messages and notifications, but with coffee and quiet and the comfortable rhythm of a household waking together. The kitchen smells like possibility, like the day hasn't yet made its demands, like there's still time to do everything that needs doing, and maybe even something extra, something just for the joy of it. Your mother hums softly while she works, a tune you don't recognize, but that sounds like contentment set to music. This is her domain, her kingdom, and she rules it with quiet competence that makes everything seem effortless, even though you're old enough now to know it isn't. Breakfast in the 50s isn't something you grab on the way out the door. It's an event, a gathering, a moment when the family sits together before scattering into their separate days. The table is already set, plates and silverware arranged with care, napkins folded into simple triangles. Your father sits at the head of the table, newspaper open, reading the headlines while his coffee steams beside him. Your mother moves between the stove and the table, carrying platters of scrambled eggs, bacon that crackles and snaps, toast slathered with butter that melts into golden pools. The kitchen smells like comfort, like security, like a world where breakfast means something more than fuel. Your siblings arrive one by one, hair combed, faces washed, taking their places without being asked. Your younger brother slides into his chair and immediately reaches for the orange juice, earning a sharp look from your mother that says, "Wait until everyone is served." Your sister sits primly, hands folded in her lap, trying to demonstrate that she's the responsible one, the one who knows how things should be done. You take your own seat and wait, because rushing breakfast would be like rushing a church service. Technically possible, but somehow wrong. When everyone is settled, your father sets down his newspaper, folds it neatly beside his plate, and the meal begins. Platters are passed from hand to hand, each person taking what they need, and the portions are generous because your mother believes that no one should leave the table hungry. The eggs are fluffy, cooked with a splash of milk that makes them tender. The bacon is crispy at the edges but still chewy in the middle, exactly the way your father likes it. The toast is warm and golden, and you spread it thick with butter and jam, watching the two melt together into something better than either one alone. Conversation flows easily around the table. Your father mentions something he read in the paper, a story about the new highway they're planning to build or the trouble brewing overseas. Your mother shares news from the neighborhood, who's expecting a baby, who's planning to repaint their house, who won the church raffle on Sunday. Your brother talks about the baseball game planned for this afternoon, arguing with your sister about whether she's allowed to play or if it's boys only. You chip in occasionally, but mostly you just listen, absorbing the rhythm of family talk that feels like a language you were born knowing. The orange juice is cold and sweet, and leaves a slight pulp on your tongue. The coffee your parents drink smells strong and adult, and you wonder when you'll be old enough to join them, to sit at this table with your own cup and feel like you've finally arrived at some invisible finish line of maturity. For now, you have milk, poured into a glass that shows cartoon characters on the side, a reminder that childhood still has its claim on you. Your mother doesn't sit, not really. She hovers between her own chair and the stove, refilling platters, pouring more coffee, making sure everyone has what they need. It's only when everyone else is nearly finished that she finally settles into her own meal, eating quickly, efficiently, already thinking about the dishes that need washing and the beds that need making. When breakfast ends, your father rises first, folding his napkin beside his plate, checking his watch to make sure he's still on schedule. He kisses your mother on the cheek, grabs his lunch bag from the counter, and heads out the door to a job that will keep him until evening. Your siblings scatter to finish getting ready for school, and you help clear the table, stacking plates, carrying them to the sink where they'll wait in soapy water until there's time to deal with them properly. This is how mornings work. This is how families work, together briefly before the day pulls everyone in different directions. School doesn't require a car, a carpool, or a complex scheduling matrix. It requires shoes, a satchel, and the willingness to walk. You step outside into the cool morning air, your breath visible in small clouds, and start down the sidewalk with your friends who have been waiting on the corner like they do every morning. The neighborhood is waking up around you. Garage doors open, cars back slowly out of driveways. Mothers stand on porches, waving as you pass, calling out reminders to be careful, to be good, to come straight home after school. You wave back, and the gesture feels like a contract, a promise that you'll return safely to this same street, this same corner, this same world that feels secure enough to let children wander through it, unsupervised. The sidewalk is uneven in places, cracked and lifted by tree roots that have been growing underneath for decades. You know every bump and dip by heart, could walk this route blindfolded and never stumble. The maple trees that line the street are old and enormous, their branches meeting overhead to form a green tunnel that dapples the sunlight into shifting patterns on the pavement. In fall, these same trees will drop leaves by the thousands, creating piles perfect for jumping into. In winter, they'll stand bare and stark, black branches against white sky. But now, in the gentle warmth of morning, they're full and green and alive, rustling softly in the breeze. Your friends chatter as you walk, discussing important matters like yesterday's baseball game, today's arithmetic test, and whether Tommy Wilson really did see a snake in his backyard or if he's making it up for attention. The conversation loops and circles, never quite reaching a conclusion but not really needing to. The talking is the point, the easy companionship of people who've known each other their whole lives and expect to keep knowing each other for the rest of them. You pass Mr. Henderson, already out working in his garden, pulling weeds from around his tomato plants. He straightens as you approach, one hand on his lower back, and calls out a good morning that you return in chorus. Mrs. Chen is sweeping her front steps, and she pauses to smile at your little group, asking if you studied for your test, telling you she knows you'll do fine. The neighborhood watches you pass with friendly eyes, and you feel held by their attention, safely seen. The crossing guard stands at the busy intersection, a woman in an orange vest holding a stop sign as big as she is. She knows every child by name, knows which ones tend to dart into the street without looking, which ones can be trusted to wait for her signal. She steps into traffic with absolute authority, stopping cars with nothing more than her raised hand and her unshakable certainty that drivers will obey. They always do. You cross in a chattering cluster, and she winks at you as you reach the other side, a small gesture that says she's glad to see you, glad you're safe for another day. The school building appears ahead, Red brick and tall windows, American flag snapping on its pole in the morning breeze. Other children converge from different directions, all walking, all arriving on their own power. The playground fills with shouting and running, and the particular chaos that happens when you put 100 children in one place and tell them they have 10 minutes before the bell rings. You join in, dropping your satchel by the fence, running to join a game of tag already in progress, your earlier conversation forgotten in the immediate joy of movement and noise and play. When the bell rings, everyone freezes for just a moment, that split second of transition between freedom and structure. Then you grab your bag and file inside, shoes echoing in the hallway, still breathless from running, still smiling from whatever game was interrupted. And somehow, without anyone really thinking about it, you've travelled from home to school safely, independently, part of a community that makes that kind of freedom possible. The Neighbourhood Watch in the 1950s isn't an official organisation with signs and meetings. It's simply the way people live, the quiet understanding that everyone is keeping an eye on everyone else, not out of suspicion, but out of care. Mrs. Henderson sees you walk by her window every morning at 7:45. Mr. Patterson notices when a strange car parks on the street too long. The mailman knows which houses get what kind of mail, and when something seems off. This invisible network of attention means that children can roam, that doors can stay unlocked, that life can unfold with a kind of ease that feels impossible now. You're never truly alone, because the street itself is watching, gently, protectively, without ever making you feel observed. It works because everyone understands the unspoken rules. You don't pry, but you pay attention. You don't gossip maliciously, but you share information that might be useful. You don't interfere unless there's real need. But when that need arises, you show up without being asked. This delicate balance between privacy and community creates a safety net that catches people before they fall too far. Mrs. Chen, who lives 3 houses down, waters her roses every evening at 6. From her front yard she has a clear view of most of the street, and she knows the rhythm of every household. She knows that the Johnsons usually get home by 5:30, so when the house stays dark past 7, she makes a phone call to make sure everything is all right. She knows that Mr. Brennan's daughter visits every Wednesday, so when 2 Wednesdays pass without the familiar blue sedan appearing, she bakes a casserole and carries it over, using the food as an excuse to check that he's managing on his own. She never says she's watching. She'd be offended if you called it that. She's just being neighbourly, doing what neighbours do. The children are watched most carefully of all. Not in a way that feels stifling, but in a way that creates boundaries without fences. You can roam, but not too far. You can play in the street, but someone is always glancing out a window to make sure the game doesn't get too rough. When you skin your knee 3 houses from home, Mrs. Patterson appears with band-aids and mercurochrome before you even have time to cry properly. When you and your friends build a fort in the vacant lot, Mr. Henderson wanders by to make sure the structure won't collapse on anyone. They never say they're checking on you. They're just out for a walk, just happened to be passing by, just thought they'd see what you were up to. This watchfulness extends to the unusual, the out of place. The stranger walking slowly down the sidewalk looking at houses too carefully will find himself politely questioned by Mr. Rodriguez, who just happened to be getting his mail and couldn't help but notice you seem lost. Can I help you find an address? The car idling at the curb for too long will prompt a call to Sheriff Morrison. Nothing urgent, probably nothing at all, but there's a vehicle I don't recognise and thought you should know. The screen door left open on a house whose owners are supposed to be at work will bring a knock. A hello? Just wanted to make sure everything's okay here. It creates a bubble of security that's hard to quantify. Crime isn't non-existent, people still lock their doors at night, still keep valuables out of sight, but there's a sense that the neighborhood itself is a kind of organism that rejects threats through collective awareness. You can't sneak through a place where everyone knows what belongs and what doesn't, where the mailman notices that the Hendersons haven't picked up their mail in 2 days and alerts a family member, where Mrs. Chen sees smoke coming from a window before the fire department does. For the children growing up in this environment, it means freedom within boundaries. You can ride your bike beyond where your parents can see you, because someone else will be watching. You can stay out until the streetlights come on, because the neighborhood itself will guide you home if you lose track of time. And if you do something you shouldn't, you'll hear about it before you get to your own front door because someone saw, someone always sees, and they care enough to make sure your parents know. It's accountability without surveillance, protection without imprisonment, and it works because everyone has agreed, without ever discussing it, that this is how it should be. The hardware store smells like sawdust, oil, and possibility. The wooden floor creaks beneath your feet as you step inside, and the bell above the door announces your arrival with a cheerful jingle. The aisles are narrow, stacked high with tools, nails, paint cans, and mysterious metal objects whose purposes you can only guess. Behind the counter stands Mr. Williams, who knows every customer by name and every tool by heart. He can tell you exactly which screw you need, which paint will hold up best, which brand of sandpaper won't let you down. He doesn't rush you. He doesn't check his watch. He simply waits, patient and knowledgeable, ready to solve whatever small domestic crisis brought you through his door. The store is dim despite the afternoon sunlight trying to filter through the dusty front windows. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, casting everything in a slightly greenish glow that makes the whole place feel like it exists outside of normal time. The shelves reach nearly to the ceiling, organized according to a logic that only Mr. Williams fully understands. Nails are sorted by size into wooden cubbies, each one labelled in neat handwriting that's faded to pale grey. Paint cans are stacked in pyramids, their labels promising colours like eggshell and seafoam and sunset rose, names that sound more poetic than any paint has a right to be. You wander the aisles slowly, not entirely sure what you're looking for, but knowing you'll recognise it when you see it. Your father sent you here with instructions to get a new washer for the leaky kitchen faucet, but the world of plumbing supplies is vast and confusing, full of brass fittings and rubber gaskets and copper pipes that all look vaguely threatening. You pick up various items, turning them over in your hands, trying to match them to the mental image of what broke this morning. Mr. Williams appears at your elbow with the quiet suddenness of someone who's spent decades perfecting the art of helpful hovering. "What are we fixing today?" he asks, and you explain about the faucet, the steady drip that's been driving your mother to distraction, the way your father peered under the sink with a flashlight and announced that a 20-cent part would solve a problem that felt much larger. Mr. Williams nods, already moving toward a specific drawer, his hands reaching without looking to pull out exactly what you need. "This one should do it," he says, holding up a small rubber ring that seems far too simple to be the solution to anything. He walks you through the installation, describing each step with the patience of someone who understands that knowledge is meant to be shared, not hoarded. "You'll want to turn off the water first," he says, pointing to where the valve should be, "and make sure you get the old one out completely before you put this in, otherwise it won't seal right." The counter is worn smooth from decades of elbows leaning, hands resting, purchases counted out in coins and small bills. An old cash register sits there, the kind with keys that pop up when pressed, and a drawer that springs open with a decisive ding. Mr. Williams rings up your purchase, 22 cents, and you hand over a quarter, receiving your change along with the washer dropped into a small paper bag. He thanks you for your business like he means it, like this tiny transaction matters, and maybe it does. Maybe every interaction in a place like this carries weight, builds relationships, creates the kind of community where people help each other fix things instead of just throwing them away. You leave with your prize, the bell jingling again behind you, and as you step back into the sunshine you feel competent, capable, like you've just participated in something important. The hardware store isn't just a place to buy things, it's a place to learn, to solve problems, to be treated like someone worthy of time and attention. And Mr. Williams will be there tomorrow, and the day after, ready to help with the next small crisis, the next broken thing that needs mending, holding together the neighbourhood one washer at a time. Saturday mornings belong to children in a way no other time does. The rest of the week is ruled by adults, by school bells and bedtimes, but Saturday morning is yours. You wake up early, not because you have to, but because cartoons start at 7 and you refuse to miss a single minute. You tiptoe downstairs, careful not to wake your parents, and turn on the television, keeping the volume low. The screen flickers to life in black and white, and suddenly you're transported, watching characters chase each other through impossible landscapes, watching roadrunners outsmart coyotes, watching heroes triumph in ways that feel both absurd and absolutely right. You sit cross-legged on the floor, a bowl of cereal balanced in your lap, and for 2 glorious hours nothing else matters. The television takes a moment to warm up, the screen glowing faintly before the picture appears, crackling with static. You adjust the antenna, moving it fractionally until the image clears, then settle into your spot on the carpet, the one patch worn slightly thinner than the rest from this exact ritual repeated every Saturday for as long as you can remember. The one that says she's disappointed but not surprised. His name is George, though most people just call him the milkman, as if the job and the person have merged into one identity. He's been delivering to this neighbourhood for 15 years, knows every family, remembers birthdays and anniversaries, notices when someone's been sick because their order changes or stops altogether. He drives a white truck with the dairy's name painted on the side in cheerful red letters, and the back is fitted with special shelves that keep the bottles from tipping as he navigates the streets. The bottles themselves are beautiful in their simplicity, clear glass that shows the milk inside, heavy enough to feel substantial in your hand. The cream settles naturally at the top overnight, creating a distinct layer that your mother shakes to distribute or skims off for coffee, depending on her mood. The caps are cardboard, waxed to keep moisture out, and they pop off with a satisfying resistance that means the seal was good, the milk protected from everything that might spoil it. On the porch, George leaves whatever your family ordered, usually 2 bottles of whole milk, sometimes a bottle of chocolate milk as a weekend treat, occasionally a carton of eggs or a block of butter. He keeps track of it all in a small notebook he carries in his shirt pocket, pages worn soft from constant handling, pencil marks recording who gets what and when. Your mother leaves payment in the empty bottles, bills and coins that George collects and replaces with full ones, a transaction that happens without either party being present, built entirely on trust. Sometimes, if you wake early enough, you catch him in the act. He nods as he sets down your bottles, asks how your folks are doing, mentions that he heard your father won the raffle at the church social last week. He knows things like that, the small details that weave a neighbourhood together. He knows that Mrs. Chen's daughter is expecting a baby, that the Hendersons are planning to repaint their house, that Mr. Rodriguez just bought a new lawnmower and is insufferably proud of it. He knows because he's there every morning, moving through the sleeping streets, a silent witness to the rhythms of other people's lives. The milk tastes different than what comes later, richer somehow, less processed, closer to the source. You pour it over cereal and watch it pool around the flakes, turning slightly sweet as the sugar dissolves. You drink it straight from a glass and feel the cold slide down your throat, coating everything in smooth whiteness. Your mother uses it for everything, cooking and baking and the endless cups of coffee that fuel her days. When it runs low, she leaves a note in the bottle, "Please bring 3 tomorrow," and George reads it the next morning and adjusts his route accordingly. There's something deeply comforting about the whole arrangement. The idea that while you sleep, someone is taking care of this one small need, ensuring that your family has what it requires to start the day. The predictability of it, the knowledge that the milk will be there every morning without fail, creates a sense of order in a world that sometimes feels chaotic. And George, moving through the darkness in his white truck, bottles clinking softly as he makes his rounds, is part of what holds that order together, one delivery at a time. Summer in a 50s suburb unfolds in backyards, those little patches of grass and garden that become entire universes when you're young. The sprinkler spins lazily in the centre of the lawn, throwing arcs of water that catch the sunlight and turn into brief, shimmering rainbows. You run through it screaming, your friends beside you, soaked to the skin and deliriously happy. The grass is soft beneath your bare feet. The water is shockingly cold. Your mother watches from the kitchen window, smiling at the chaos, knowing she'll have to deal with muddy footprints later, but deciding it's worth it. The afternoon stretches on forever, timeless and golden. The kind of day you'll remember decades later when summer doesn't feel quite as endless anymore. The backyard is fenced, but just barely. A low chain-link barrier that's more suggestion than boundary. You can see into the neighbours' yards on either side, and they can see into yours, and this transparency creates an extended playground that belongs to everyone and no one. When your sprinkler runs, kids from 3 houses down appear as if summoned, asking if they can join, and your mother always says yes because that's what you do. The more children in the yard, the better. The louder the laughter, the more successful the day. Someone brings a slip and slide, that long yellow plastic sheet that you spray with the hose until it's slick enough to send you sliding. The friction warm against your stomach, grass and mud mixing underneath until you're not sure if you're sliding or swimming or something entirely new. You take running starts, launching yourself onto the plastic with abandon that will seem insane when you're older, but feels perfectly reasonable now. You collide with each other, tangle up in slippery heaps, emerge grass-stained and grinning. Your mother brings out popsicles midway through the afternoon, pulling them from the freezer where they've been waiting for exactly this moment. They're the cheap kind, made from frozen Kool-Aid in plastic moulds, and they drip sticky sweetness down your arms faster than you can lick them clean. The flavours are bright and artificial, grape and orange and cherry, and they stain your tongue colours that don't exist in nature. You suck on them until your teeth ache from the cold, until nothing remains but the empty plastic shell, and then you run back into the spray of water to wash the stickiness away. The garden hose is the source of endless entertainment. You spray each other, fill buckets and dump them over heads, create small rivers in the dirt and sail leaf boats down them. Someone discovers that if you put your thumb over the end of the hose just right, you can create a powerful jet that shoots water 20 feet. This leads to competitions, then to warfare, then to everyone being so thoroughly soaked that it hardly matters anymore. The afternoon heat is thick and heavy, the kind that makes everything slow down, but the water keeps you cool enough to keep playing. You lie on your back in the grass, staring up at clouds that drift by in fantastic shapes, arguing about whether that one looks more like a dragon or a horse. The grass prickles against your wet skin. The sun beats down, already beginning the work of drying you off, warming you from the outside in. Your father comes home from work and stands on the back porch, loosening his tie, watching the chaos with an expression that might be amusement or exhaustion, or some combination of both. Your mother brings him a glass of iced tea, and they stand together for a moment, 2 adults observing the wild freedom of childhood, remembering what it felt like to be young enough that a backyard and a sprinkler could constitute paradise. Eventually, someone's mother calls them home for dinner. Then another. One by one, the children peel away, dripping and happy, leaving trails of water across sidewalks as they head to their own houses. You're the last one in your yard, turning the sprinkler off reluctantly, watching the last arc of water fall to earth and disappear into the grass. The day is ending, but the memory of it settles into your bones, warm and permanent, another perfect summer afternoon added to the collection you're building without realizing it, the collection you'll carry with you for the rest of your life. Sunday afternoons are for drives, slow, meandering trips through the countryside that serve no purpose except to fill time and see the world beyond your neighbourhood. Your father drives carefully, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the open window. Your mother sits beside him, hair tied back with a scarf to keep it from blowing wild. You and your siblings sprawl across the back seat, watching farms and fields roll past, counting cows, pointing at horses, arguing about nothing important. The radio plays softly, big band music or Sunday sermons, depending on your father's mood. No one is in a hurry. No one checks a clock. The drive itself is the destination, and when you finally turn around and head home, you feel like you've been somewhere even though you've barely left town. The car is enormous by modern standards, a boat of chrome and steel that floats down the highway with barely a rumble. The seats are wide and bouncy, upholstered in fabric that gets hot in the sun and sticks to your legs when you're wearing shorts. The windows are all rolled down because the air conditioning consists of wind and hope, and the breeze that whips through the car smells like cut grass and honeysuckle and the faint exhaust of other vehicles. Your father is relaxed in a way he never is during the week, one elbow propped on the window frame, his face tilted slightly toward the sun. He points out landmarks as you pass them, the old Wilson farm where he used to work summers as a boy, the covered bridge that has been there since before anyone can remember, the place where the best fishing hole is hidden away from the road. He's a different person on these drives, the stress of work temporarily forgotten, replaced by something gentler, more present. Your mother has a map spread across her lap, though everyone knows she won't look at it. She likes having it there, likes the possibility it represents, but these Sunday drives never follow planned routes. You go where whim takes you, turning down roads just to see where they lead, doubling back when you reach dead ends, discovering small towns whose names you've never heard before. She comments on houses as you pass them, admiring flower gardens and fresh paint, clucking sympathetically at places that have fallen into disrepair. In the back seat, you and your siblings create elaborate games to pass the time. You count cows in the fields, each person claiming one side of the road, losing your entire count if you pass a cemetery. You compete to spot specific coloured cars, shouting out when you see one, arguing about whether burgundy counts as red. You play the alphabet game with road signs, searching desperately for that elusive Q or X. Games don't matter. The competition is beside the point. You're just filling the space with noise and laughter, making the drive feel active even though you're completely passive, carried along by your father's hands on the wheel. The countryside opens up around you in a patchwork of farms and forests. Corn grows in straight rows that blur into green ribbons as you pass. Wheat fields ripple in the wind like golden water. Cows stand in clusters under trees, seeking shade from the afternoon sun. Red barns lean slightly, their paint faded but still vibrant against the summer sky. Everything feels permanent here, timeless, like these fields have always looked exactly like this and always will. You stop occasionally, pulling off at roadside stands to buy fresh corn or tomatoes or whatever's in season. Your father talks to the farmer, asking about the weather and the crops, and money changes hands for produce that still has dirt clinging to it, proof of how recently it was picked. Your mother tucks the bag under her seat, already planning what she'll make for dinner, how she'll transform these raw ingredients into something that feeds the family. As the afternoon wears on and the sun drops lower, your father eventually turns the car back toward home. The drive back is quieter, everyone tired from the sun and the wind and the gentle monotony of watching the world slide past. You rest your head against the window, feeling the vibration of the road through the glass, your eyelids heavy. The radio plays something slow and sweet. Your parents talk in low voices about nothing much, and you drift in that space between waking and sleeping, content and safe, carried home by people who love you through a world that feels, for this moment at least, completely peaceful. The corner drugstore is more than just a place to fill prescriptions. It's a social hub, a meeting spot, a slice of small-town life compressed into a single building with a striped awning and a Coca-Cola sign in the window. Inside, the soda fountain gleams chrome and marble, polished until it shines. You slide onto a red vinyl stool that spins if you wiggle just right, and the soda jerk, usually a teenager saving up for college, greets you with a grin and asks what you'll have. A chocolate malt, a cherry phosphate, a root beer floats so cold it makes your teeth ache. You sip slowly, savouring every drop, watching the other customers come and go, listening to the conversations that swirl around you like friendly ghosts. This is where you learn what's happening in the neighbourhood. Who's getting married? Who's moving away? Who won the church raffle last weekend? The drugstore smells like a combination of things that shouldn't work together but somehow do. Vanilla syrup and rubbing alcohol, newsprint and peppermint, the faint chemical tang of developing photographs and the sweetness of penny candy. The black and white checkered floor is worn smooth in the high traffic areas, especially right in front of the soda fountain where generations of feet have scuffed away the shine. Behind the counter, the soda jerk works with practiced efficiency, pulling levers, mixing syrups, sending foam cascading over the tops of tall glasses. He's memorized everyone's usual order, knows without asking that you want extra malt powder in your chocolate shake, that Mrs. Henderson always gets a cherry coke with extra cherries, that Mr. Patterson likes his root beer float with vanilla ice cream on the side so it doesn't melt too fast. The attention to these details makes you feel known, valued, like your preferences matter in the grand scheme of things. The wooden booths along the wall are filled with people who finish their shopping and aren't quite ready to go home. Two women sit with their heads bent together, speaking in low voices that rise occasionally with laughter. A man in work clothes reads his newspaper while nursing a cup of coffee that's probably gone cold. A young couple shares a milkshake with two straws, their foreheads nearly touching across the small table, lost in the private world that new love creates. The magazine rack near the front holds the latest issues of Life and Look and Saturday Evening Post, their covers bright with illustrations of idealized American life. You spin the rack slowly, looking at the faces, reading headlines, deciding whether to spend your remaining coins on reading material or save them for next time. The comic books are in a separate spinner, and you give that a spin too, looking for the newest Superman or Batman, checking to see if any new heroes have appeared since last week. The prescription counter sits at the back, separated from the social area by a wooden partition that provides the illusion of medical privacy. Mr. Kowalski, the pharmacist, works back there in his white coat, counting pills with methodical precision, typing labels on his typewriter, consulting enormous reference books when someone brings in an unfamiliar prescription. People trust him completely, believe that his knowledge and care stand between them and illness, and he takes that responsibility seriously, never rushing, always double-checking, treating every customer like they're the only one who matters. The bell above the door chimes constantly as people come and go. Mrs. Chen arrives to pick up her husband's heart medication and stays to chat about her daughter's engagement. The paper boy comes in to buy a Coke with the tips he earned this morning. 3 teenage girls cluster at the cosmetics counter, testing lipstick colours on the backs of their hands, giggling at their own daring. The drugstore holds them all, provides space for errands and socializing to blend together in a way that makes neither feel like an imposition. You finish your malt, scraping the bottom of the glass with your straw to get every last bit, and reluctantly slide off the stool. You've been here almost an hour, and the afternoon is slipping away. You pay your 15 cents, leave a nickel tip that makes the soda jerk nod his thanks, and push back out into the sunshine. The drugstore will still be here tomorrow and the day after, ready to provide the same combination of practical service and human connection that makes it more than just a store. It's a gathering place, a constant, a spot on the map where the neighbourhood comes together without anyone having to plan it or force it. It just happens naturally the way good things often do. Evenings in the 1950s happen on front porches, those transitional spaces between the private world of your home and the public world of the street. As the sun sets and the heat of the day finally breaks, families drift outside, drawn by the promise of a breeze and the company of neighbours. Your father sits in the rocking chair, newspaper folded in his lap, occasionally glancing up to wave at someone passing by. Your mother shells peas into a bowl, her hands working automatically while she chats with Mrs. Peterson from next door. You lie on the porch floor, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of adult conversation wash over you like a familiar song. Lightning bugs begin to appear in the yard, blinking on and off like tiny stars that fell to earth and forgot how to get back up. The wooden porch boards are still warm from the day's sun, radiating heat that's gentle now instead of punishing. The paint is worn smooth where feet have tracked across it thousands of times, and the boards creak in familiar patterns that tell you who's walking even without looking. Your father's tread is heavy and steady. Your mother's is quick and light. Yours is somewhere in between, still finding its permanent rhythm. The rocking chair squeaks as your father moves back and forth, a metronome keeping time with the evening. He's changed out of his work clothes into something comfortable, short sleeves and loose trousers, his feet in worn slippers that your mother keeps threatening to throw away but never does. He looks relaxed, the tension that lives in his shoulders during the week melted away by dinner and the cooling air. When someone walks by on the sidewalk, he raises his hand in greeting, sometimes adding a comment about the weather or asking after their family. Your mother's hands never stop moving, even in rest. The peas snap open under her thumbs, the pods falling into one bowl while the peas themselves ping into another. She's been shelling peas since she was younger than you, learned it from her own mother, and her hands know the work so well that her mind is free to wander. She and Mrs. Peterson talk across the gap between porches, their voices rising and falling, discussing recipes and children and the thousand small concerns that make up daily life. Other neighbours emerge as the evening progresses. Mr. Rodriguez settles into his own porch chair 3 houses down, smoking a pipe that sends up fragrant clouds. The Henderson children run shrieking through their yard, playing some game that requires volume and velocity in equal measure. Mrs. Chen waters her roses with a hose, the spray catching the last of the sunlight and creating tiny rainbows that hover for a moment before disappearing. You watch the lightning bugs begin their evening performance, blinking in the growing darkness. They hover low over the grass at first, rising gradually as full night approaches. You've caught them before, trapped them gently in jars with holes punched in the lids, created makeshift lanterns that glow with soft green light. Tonight you just watch, content to let them be free, their random patterns more beautiful than any design could be. The street itself becomes a stage as darkness falls. Children on bicycles cruise past, their playing cards clothes pinned to spokes clicking rhythmically. A car turns onto the street, headlights sweeping across porches, and everyone automatically tracks its progress, noting that it's the Millers returning from visiting their daughter. A dog barks somewhere, is answered by another dog 3 streets over, begins a conversation in a language only they understand. The conversations on the porch meander through topics without urgency. There's talk of the upcoming church social, speculation about whether the Johnsons will really paint their house that shade of yellow they mentioned, concern about Mr. Brennan, who hasn't been looking well lately. These aren't profound discussions, just the gentle sharing of information that keeps a community connected, that ensures everyone knows enough about everyone else to offer help when it's needed. As full darkness arrives, the porch lights come on up and down the street, yellow circles of light that mark each home like beacons. Moths immediately begin their kamikaze missions, flinging themselves at bulbs with determination that would be admirable if it weren't so futile. The air cools another degree, becomes perfectly comfortable, the temperature that makes you understand why people built porches in the first place. Your mother finishes her peas and stands, stretching her back with a small sound of relief. Time to get ready for bed, she says, and you know this means the evening is officially over. Your father folds his newspaper, pushes himself up from the rocking chair with a grunt. You rise from the porch floor, your body imprinted with the pattern of the boards, and follow them inside. Behind you, the neighbourhood continues its evening rituals, each porch holding its own small gathering, each family winding down in its own way, all of them connected by the simple act of being outside together, sharing the soft summer night. The ice cream truck's jingle drifts through the neighbourhood like a siren song, and every child within 3 blocks stops whatever they're doing and runs. You don't walk, you don't stroll, you run, your bare feet slapping against hot pavement, your heart pounding with the urgency of someone chasing something that might disappear if you're not fast enough. The truck is white and boxy, covered in colourful pictures of popsicles and ice cream bars, and the driver, a patient man who has learned to tolerate the chaos of children, opens the side window and waits. You press your nose against the glass case, overwhelmed by choices, paralysed by the fear of picking wrong. Finally you point, hand over your coins, and receive a frozen treasure wrapped in paper. The first bite is always the best, cold and sweet and perfect, worth every second of the desperate sprint that got you here. The jingle itself is unmistakable, a tinny melody that plays from speakers mounted on the truck's roof, looping endlessly as the vehicle crawls down the street at speeds that barely qualify as movement. This song is something vaguely cheerful and thoroughly annoying, the kind of tune that will stick in your head for hours afterward. But right now, it's the most beautiful sound in the world because it means ice cream is near. You weren't doing anything important when you heard it. You were in the backyard drawing in the dirt with a stick, or sitting on the front steps reading a comic book, or helping your mother sort laundry. But the moment that jingle registered, everything else ceased to exist. You jumped up, shouted "ice cream truck" to anyone within earshot, and began the mad scramble for money. Your mother, hearing the commotion, already has her purse out, already knows this is a battle she won't win. She fishes out a quarter, maybe 35 cents if she's feeling generous, and places it in your sweaty palm with a reminder to be careful crossing the street. You grab the money and run, joined by your siblings if they're home, by neighbour kids who've also heard the call, all of you converging on the street corner where the truck traditionally stops. The truck is already surrounded by the time you arrive, a cluster of children jumping and waving as if the driver might somehow not see them. He's a middle-aged man with a patient face and a coin changer strapped to his belt, and he's been doing this long enough that nothing surprises him anymore. He opens the sliding window with practiced ease, revealing the freezer chest inside, and the cold air that wafts out provides momentary relief from the summer heat. The choices are overwhelming. Ice cream sandwiches with their chocolate cookie outsides, fudgesicles that will melt faster than you can eat them, push-up pops in bright colours, drumsticks with chocolate and nuts at the bottom, popsicles in every flavour imaginable, bomb pops with their red, white and blue layers. Each option calls to you, promises satisfaction, makes it impossible to decide. You study the pictures on the truck's side, trying to remember what you got last time, whether you liked it, whether you should try something new or stick with what you know. The other children are shouting their orders, counting out their coins, receiving their treats with reverent care. The pressure to decide mounts as the line behind you grows, as other children begin to express impatience with theatrical sighs. Finally, you make your choice. A chocolate eclair bar, perhaps, or a strawberry shortcake. You state your selection, hand over your coins, and the driver reaches into the freezer, his arm disappearing into the frosty depths before emerging with your chosen treasure. He hands it over, and you accept it like he's given you something precious, which in this moment he has. You peel away from the truck, already tearing at the wrapper, knowing you have only seconds before the melting begins. The first bite is transcendent, cold enough to shock your teeth, sweet enough to make you forget every other concern. You eat quickly but not frantically, savouring the experience while also racing against time and temperature. The other children scatter to curbs and stoops, everyone focused on their own frozen treats, a moment of individual pleasure within the communal experience. Drips begin immediately, running down wrists and chins, staining shirts and sidewalks. No one cares. This is summer in its purest form, sticky and sweet and somehow perfect despite or maybe because of the mess. The ice cream truck driver waits until the last child has been served, then closes his window, restarts his jingle, and rolls slowly down the street toward the next neighbourhood, the next gathering of children who will run just as fast, choose just as carefully, savour just as completely. And you're left standing in the street, wrapper crumpled in your hand, mouth cold and smile wide, already looking forward to the next time that jingle drifts through the air and makes the whole world stop. The church social is where the entire town comes together, not just to worship, but to eat, gossip, and remind each other that they're part of something bigger than themselves. Long tables covered in checkered cloths fill the church basement, groaning under the weight of casseroles, jello salads, fried chicken, and pies, so many pies. Everyone brings something, and no one goes home hungry. You move through the crowd with a paper plate, loading it with food while adults smile down at you and tell you you're growing like a weed. The air smells like green beans and vanilla and the faint mustiness of old hymnals. After dinner, the kids are shooed outside to run wild while the adults clean up and settle into conversations that will last until someone finally says, "Well, I suppose we should get going," even though no one actually leaves for another 20 minutes. The church basement has low ceilings and fluorescent lights that buzz faintly, casting everything in a slightly harsh glow that makes everyone look tired and holy at the same time. The walls are painted that particular shade of institutional beige that exists nowhere else in nature, and they're decorated with construction paper cutouts made by Sunday school children, crooked crosses and wobbly doves that speak to enthusiasm more than skill. The tables are arranged in long rows, each one sagging slightly under the weight of what feels like enough food to feed the entire county. This isn't an organised meal where everyone coordinates who brings what. This is chaos turned delicious, where 7 people bring potato salad and nobody brings rolls, and somehow it all works out because it always does. The casseroles are mysterious combinations of cream soups and canned vegetables and mysterious proteins, topped with crispy fried onions or crushed crackers. The jello salads defy both logic and gravity. Suspended fruits and miniature marshmallows floating in gelatin that jiggles dangerously when anyone walks too close to the table. But the fried chicken is what everyone's really here for, specifically Mrs. Patterson's fried chicken, which is legendary in these parts. She guards her recipe like a state secret, changes the subject whenever anyone asks about it, and shows up with 3 enormous platters that disappear within the first 15 minutes. You've learned to get in line early if you want any chance at a drumstick. The pies occupy their own table, a whole separate shrine to sugar and butter and fruit. Apple pies with lattice tops so perfect they look store-bought. Cherry pies with juice already leaking through the vents. Lemon meringue pies topped with clouds of toasted foam. Chocolate cream pies that promise to be too rich but never are. Pecan pies that will cement your teeth together. The women who bake them stand nearby, pretending they don't care whether anyone takes a slice of theirs, but watching carefully to see whose pie goes first, keeping score in a competition no one acknowledges but everyone understands. You load your plate with a little bit of everything, creating combinations that would horrify a nutritionist but taste like heaven on cardboard. A scoop of 3-bean salad sits next to a piece of fried chicken, which touches the macaroni and cheese, which runs into the dinner roll you managed to snag from someone's secret stash. The adults you pass offer commentary on your choices, warnings that your eyes are bigger than your stomach, predictions that you'll never eat all that. They're wrong. You'll eat all of it and go back for seconds. The meal happens in waves, with people eating in shifts because there aren't enough chairs for everyone to sit at once. The older folks and the mothers with small children get the seats. Everyone else stands in clusters, balancing plates and conversation, occasionally shuffling to one side to let someone pass. The noise level is tremendous. Dozens of conversations happening simultaneously, punctuated by laughter and the clatter of forks on paper plates. Children eat quickly, motivated less by hunger than by the knowledge that freedom waits outside. You shovel food into your mouth without really tasting it, washing everything down with red Kool-Aid that stains your lips and tongue. When your plate is empty enough to be defensible, you abandon it on the table and head for the door, joining the stream of other children who've reached the same conclusion. Outside, the evening is cool and welcoming, and the church grounds transform into a playground. The cemetery beside the church is technically off limits for running, but the rule is enforced loosely, and everyone knows which graves belong to people who wouldn't have minded children playing nearby. You chase and shriek and burn off the sugar and fat you just consumed, playing games with rules that shift depending on who's winning. Inside, the adults settle into the real purpose of the evening. The cleanup happens efficiently. All those women who've attended 1,000 of these events moving in synchronized patterns, scraping plates, wrapping leftovers, wiping tables, and then they sit gathering in small groups and talk. They share news and concerns, offer advice and support, weave the social fabric that holds the community together. This is why these events matter, not the food or even the fellowship, but this, the simple act of people showing up for each other, paying attention to each other's lives, caring in practical ways that make a difference. The empty lot at the end of the street transforms into a baseball field every Saturday afternoon, not because anyone planned it that way, but because it's what kids do when left to their own devices. The bases are marked with old sweatshirts and flattened cardboard boxes. The rules are negotiated on the fly and change depending on who's pitching. You play until someone hits the ball into Mrs. Crawford's yard and you all have to decide whether it's worth the risk of retrieving it, or if you should just call it a home run and move on. The game lasts until the streetlights come on, or until someone's mother leans out a window and shouts that it's time for dinner, whichever comes first. No one keeps score, not really, but everyone remembers the great plays, the impossible catches, the arguments that almost turned into fistfights but ended with someone laughing and saying, "Play ball." The empty lot isn't exactly empty. It's overgrown with weeds and dandelions, dotted with rocks that need to be kicked aside, home to anthills that claim parts of the outfield as sovereign territory. The grass is patchy, worn away completely in high-traffic areas like the pitcher's mound and home plate. There's a persistent rumour that the lot used to be the site of a house that burned down, which gives the place a slightly spooky quality that everyone ignores in daylight but remembers when dusk approaches. The teams are chosen through an elaborate ritual of two captains picking players one by one, a process that reveals the social hierarchy of the neighborhood with brutal efficiency. The best players go first, the mediocre ones go in the middle, and there's always one kid who stands there, getting smaller and smaller, waiting to be picked last, trying to pretend it doesn't hurt. You've been that kid before. Everyone has, at one time or another. The equipment is a collection of borrowed and battered items. The bat is wooden, cracked and repaired with electrical tape that's begun to peel. The ball is scuffed and grass-stained. It seems loosening, but still functional enough to throw and hit. Someone's older brother donated it after he got a new one for his birthday. The gloves are whoever's bringing them, ranging from nice leather mitts that smell like oil and responsibility to cheap cloth ones that offer more spiritual than actual protection. The game begins with all the formality that a bunch of children can muster, which is to say, almost none. Someone yells, "Batter up!" Someone else argues about whether they're even ready yet. The pitcher winds up and throws, and the game is officially underway. The ball sails through the air, is missed or hit or fouled, and the afternoon begins its slow transformation into memory. The skill levels vary wildly. Tommy Rodriguez can throw a fastball that actually intimidates. Sarah Chen can hit any pitch anywhere she wants. Little Billy Henderson mostly just stands at the plate and hopes, his swing a full-body experience that occasionally connects through sheer probability. Some kids are here because they love baseball. Some are here because everyone else is here. Everyone's welcome as long as they don't cry when things don't go their way. The arguments are constant and passionate, whether a ball was fair or foul, whether someone's foot was on the base, whether that swing counted when the bat clearly slipped out of someone's hands. These disputes are resolved through a combination of democracy, volume, and whoever's most convincing. There's no umpire, no adult to appeal to, so justice is whatever the group decides it is in that moment. It's messy and unfair, and somehow it works. Mrs. Crawford's yard represents the most dangerous territory. She's not mean exactly, but she's particular about her property, and any ball that lands in her flower beds requires a volunteer willing to knock on her door and ask for it back. Sometimes she brings it to the door with a smile and a reminder to be more careful. Sometimes she keeps it for a day or two, a temporary hostage to teach a lesson about respecting people's gardens. The threat of losing the only ball is enough to make everyone try, however ineffectively, to keep it in play. Someone always tries to make things more complicated than they need to be. Bobby suggests a new rule where hitting the Johnsons' fence on a fly ball is an automatic double. Jennifer proposes that running backward to first base should be allowed just to make things interesting. These innovations are considered briefly, tried once, immediately abandoned. The traditional rules, however loosely observed, turn out to exist for good reasons. The afternoon shadows lengthen. Parents begin calling children home. The teams shrink gradually as players leave, one by one, until there aren't enough people left to field both sides properly. Someone suggests next Saturday, same time, same place, and everyone agrees with the casual certainty of people who know this ritual will repeat itself as long as summer lasts. The sweatshirts are collected from the bases. The bat and ball are claimed by whoever brought them, and the empty lot returns to being empty, waiting patiently for next week's transformation. Monday is laundry day, always has been, always will be. It's a rhythm as old as housekeeping itself, a ritual that your mother performs with the same steady determination she brings to everything. The washing machine stands in the basement or the back porch, a white enamel creature that fills with water and agitates with a sound like distant thunder. Your mother feeds it clothes, towel by towel, sheet by sheet, her hands red from the hot water and the harsh soap. When the wash is done, she carries the basket outside to the clothesline, where she pins everything up with wooden clothespins, arranging shirts and trousers and pillowcases in neat rows. The clothes snap and billow in the breeze, drying in the sun and the fresh air, and when she brings them in hours later, they smell like wind and grass and summer itself, a scent no dryer has ever managed to replicate. The washing machine is a Maytag, purchased when your parents first married, and it has faithfully performed its duty every Monday since. It's a wringer washer, which means your mother has to feed the wet clothes through 2 rollers that squeeze out the excess water, a process that requires attention and care because the wringer will just as happily squeeze your hand as it will a bedsheet. She's gotten good at it, never caught her fingers even once, but the potential danger adds a certain respect to the process. The laundry begins early, before breakfast sometimes, because Monday's work is substantial and won't complete itself. Your mother sorts the clothes into piles, whites separate from colours, heavily soiled items set aside for special attention. The washing machine fills with hot water from a hose connected to the laundry sink, and she adds soap powder that foams into sudsy clouds. The machine agitates with a rhythmic swishing sound, back and forth, working the soap through the fabric. The basement smells like detergent and dampness and the faint mildew that lives in corners despite everyone's best efforts. The concrete floor has a drain in the centre, positioned to catch overflow and spillage, which happens more often than anyone admits. The walls are unfinished, exposed beams and pipes that occasionally drip condensation. It's not a pleasant space, but it's functional, and functionality matters more than comfort when there's work to be done. After the wash cycle completes, your mother stops the machine and begins feeding clothes through the wringer. They emerge flattened and considerably drier, falling into a basket she's positioned to catch them. The wringer is both satisfying and slightly alarming to watch, the way it grabs fabric and pulls it through with mechanical determination. You've been warned repeatedly never to touch the wringer while it's running, and you've seen the red button that releases it in case of emergency, and these warnings have given you a healthy fear of the contraption. The second load goes into the machine while the first load goes outside. Your mother carries the heavy basket of damp clothes through the back door and across the yard to where the clothesline stretches between 2 metal poles sunk deep in the ground. The line is high enough that sheets won't drag on the grass, low enough that your mother can reach it without a stool. She's calculated this height precisely, like she calculates everything in her domestic kingdom. The clothes go up 1 piece at a time, secured with wooden clothespins that have been bleached by sun and softened by rain. Your mother has a system, a specific order that maximizes space and efficiency. Sheets on the outside where they can billow freely, shirts and dresses in the middle, smaller items like socks and underwear on a lower line strung parallel to the main one. Everything is smoothed before pinning, shaken to release wrinkles that would otherwise set permanently in the drying. The clothesline becomes a gallery of your family's private life, displayed for anyone to see. Your father's work shirts, crisp and white. Your mother's house dresses, practical cotton in cheerful patterns. Your school clothes, your siblings' clothes, everyone's underwear and socks. There's something vulnerable about it, this public display of domestic intimacy, but everyone's laundry looks basically the same, and no one judges because everyone's in the same situation every Monday. The clothes dry slowly in the sun and breeze, growing stiff and crispy in the process. Birds occasionally rest on the clothesline between items, adding their own contributions that require rewashing. Neighbourhood cats use the space underneath as a shortcut. Children playing nearby know to be careful of the laundry, to not let balls or frisbees crash into the clean clothes that represent hours of your mother's labour. Bringing the laundry in happens late afternoon, when everything's thoroughly dry. Your mother tests items with her hand, checking for dampness, leaving anything questionable for another hour. The dried clothes are unpinned and folded directly into the basket, and this basket is carried inside to the dining room table, where the final folding happens. The smell that comes in with them is what clean is supposed to smell like, fresh and natural and somehow pure. This is Monday. Every Monday. A rhythm so reliable you could set your calendar by it. The evening news is a family ritual, as dependable as dinner. Your father adjusts the television antenna until the picture clears, then settles into his chair with a sigh that suggests the weight of the world rests comfortably on his shoulders. The newscaster appears on the screen, serious and well-groomed, reading the day's headlines in a voice that sounds like authority itself. Your family watches in silence, absorbing stories about politics, international tensions, local events, and sports scores. No one interrupts. No one asks to change the channel. This is important, adult business. And even the children understand that for these 30 minutes, the outside world comes into your living room and demands attention. When it's over, your father clicks the television off and the spell is broken. The world retreats back to wherever it lives when you're not watching, and your family returns to the business of being a family. The television itself is a piece of furniture as much as an appliance, a massive wooden cabinet with a small screen set into its face, like a window into another dimension. The picture is in black and white, occasionally rolling or flickering, requiring adjustment to the rabbit ear antenna that sits on top. Your father has developed an instinct for this, knowing exactly where to position the antenna for optimal reception, moving it fractionally until the image snaps into clarity. The news begins with a fanfare, a musical theme that signals the transition from entertainment to information. The screen shows spinning globes or ticking clocks or other graphics that look modern and important. Then the newscaster appears, a man in a dark suit and thin tie, his hair slicked back, his expression appropriately grave. He could be reading your grocery list and you'd still believe it mattered, such is the weight of his delivery. Tonight's top story concerns the Cold War, that persistent source of anxiety that flavours everything in the 1950s. There's been another meeting between world leaders, another round of talks that seem to accomplish nothing, another reminder that the world sits balanced on the edge of something terrible. Your father's jaw tightens as he watches, your mother's hands still in her lap. Even you and your siblings sense the tension, though you don't fully understand what's at stake. The news moves on to national politics, to bills being debated in Congress, to speeches given by men whose names you recognize but whose faces all blur together in your mind. The newscaster explains what it all means, why you should care, how it might affect ordinary people. He makes it sound clear and simple, though you suspect it's neither. Your father mutters occasionally about taxes or regulations, agreeing or disagreeing with whatever's being reported, conducting a one-sided conversation with the television. There's a segment about the local community, something about the new highway being built or the school board's latest decision. This part interests you more because it's about your town, your world, places and people you might actually encounter. The footage shows familiar streets and buildings, gives you a strange thrill to see your ordinary life reflected on the television screen, as if it matters to more than just the people living it. The weather report comes with a map and a pointer, the weatherman predicting what tomorrow will bring with more confidence than seems warranted given how often he's wrong. Your mother pays close attention to this part, already planning what she'll need to do differently if rain is coming or if the heat wave will continue. The weather affects her work, her plans, her ability to manage the household, and she treats the forecast as crucial intelligence. Sports comes last, a reward for sitting through the serious news. Your father leans forward slightly, interested now in a way he wasn't before. Baseball scores scroll across the screen. Football highlights play in choppy black and white footage. The sportscaster's voice takes on an enthusiastic quality that the news anchor never permits himself, injecting excitement into descriptions of plays and games. Your father comments on various teams and players, shares opinions about trades and strategies, reveals knowledge he's accumulated from years of careful attention. And then it's over. 30 minutes of the world delivered to your living room, packaged neatly, explained clearly, stripped of any ambiguity that might confuse viewers who just want to know what's happening and whether they should worry about it. Your father reaches up and turns the knob that kills the picture, and the screen shrinks to a white dot that glows for a moment before disappearing entirely. The silence that follows feels heavy after the constant stream of information and imagery. Your family sits for a moment, transitioning back to private life, shaking off the weight of international affairs and political debates. Your mother stands first, heading to the kitchen to begin evening cleanup. Your father opens his newspaper to read what the television just told him, preferring the written version, and you and your siblings scatter to homework or play, the outside world filed away until tomorrow's broadcast brings it back again. The Five and Dime store is a wonderland for children, a place where everything costs almost nothing, and yet somehow contains the entire world. The aisles are narrow and packed, every surface covered with toys, candy, school supplies, kitchen gadgets, and things you never knew existed but suddenly need. You wander through slowly, savouring the possibilities, your allowance burning a hole in your pocket. The candy counter is the hardest test of your willpower, rows of glass jars filled with sweets, penny candies and licorice whips, and jaw breakers the size of marbles. You press your face against the glass, debating, calculating, trying to maximise the value of every cent. When you finally make your choice, the clerk measures out your candy on a small scale and pours it into a paper bag, and you leave feeling rich, like you've just pulled off the deal of the century. The Five and Dime occupies a corner storefront on Main Street, its windows packed with displays that change seasonally but always promise bargains. A bell jingles when you push through the door, announcing your arrival to the woman behind the counter, who looks up briefly, nods, and returns to her magazine. She's seen countless children wander these aisles, knows you're probably not going to steal anything, but will keep an occasional eye on you just the same. The store smells like rubber and dust and peppermint, a combination that shouldn't work but does, creating an olfactory signature that means cheap treasures and small indulgences. The wooden floor creaks beneath your feet, worn smooth by decades of shoppers, its boards slightly uneven in places where the building has settled. The toy section calls to you first, as it always does. Yo-yos hang from a pegboard display, promising tricks you'll never master, but will spend hours attempting. Plastic soldiers stand in formation inside clear plastic bags, ready to fight imaginary wars across your bedroom floor. Cap guns gleam in their cardboard packaging, suggesting adventures involving cowboys and outlaws and dramatic shootouts. Jacks and pickup sticks and paddle balls and all the simple toys that need nothing but human hands and imagination to provide hours of entertainment. The school supplies occupy several aisles, pencils and erasers and notebooks with composition covers. There are rulers and protractors and compasses for geometry, bottles of Elmer's glue and boxes of crayons in every size. Even though school feels far away during summer, something about these supplies makes you want to buy them, to prepare for a future that will arrive whether you're ready or not. The candy counter dominates the front of the store, a long glass case filled with jars of every sweet imaginable. Mary Janes and bitter honey and root beer barrels, licorice in red and black, though everyone knows red is superior. Jawbreakers in graduated sizes, from marble to baseball. Candy cigarettes that you pretend to smoke, imitating adults with sugar and chalk. Wax bottles filled with coloured syrup. Candy necklaces and bracelets that you wear until you can't resist eating them anymore. The woman behind the counter is Mrs. Fletcher, a fixture of the store for as long as anyone can remember. She knows the price of everything without looking it up, can calculate totals in her head faster than you can count out your coins. When you finally announce your selections, she weighs your candy on a small brass scale, the kind with a scoop on one side and weights on the other. She adjusts the weights until the scale balances, announces your total in a voice that brooks no negotiation, and pours your candy into a white paper bag that she twists closed at the top. You count out your coins carefully, double-checking your math, making sure you have enough. The transaction completes, and you accept your purchase with both hands, feeling the weight of it, knowing that the amount of candy you've just acquired would have cost 3 times as much at a regular store. This is the magic of the 5 and dime, making children feel wealthy on allowances that wouldn't buy much anywhere else. But you're not done yet. You still have a few coins left, and the siren song of the toy aisle calls you back. You examine the yo-yos, testing the weight of different models, reading the instructions printed on cards behind them. You consider a balsa wood airplane that requires assembly. You pick up a harmonica and blow into it experimentally, producing a sound that makes Mrs. Fletcher look up sharply and shake her head no. Eventually you settle on something, a paddleball perhaps, or a set of jacks, or a comic book from the rotating wire rack near the door. You bring it to the counter, pay your remaining coins, and leave the store with your acquisitions clutched in both hands. The bell jingles behind you as you exit back into the sunshine, your allowance spent, your satisfaction complete. The 5 and dime exists in a space between necessity and luxury, selling things people need and things they don't, making no distinction between the two. For children, it's one of the few places where their money spends just as well as adult money, where their purchasing decisions are taken seriously, where they can experience the grown-up pleasure of buying exactly what they want with money they've earned or been given. It's capitalism scaled down to child size, and it's glorious. Autumn arrives with a crispness in the air that makes everything feel more alive, more vivid, like the world is waking up from the slow drowsiness of summer. The trees explode into colour, reds and oranges and yellows so bright they almost hurt to look at. Leaves drift down in lazy spirals, carpeting the sidewalks and lawns in layers that crunch beneath your feet. Raking them is a chore that somehow doesn't feel like work, maybe because you know what comes next. You and your father pile the leaves into huge mounds at the curb, and when the pile is high enough, he strikes a match and sets it ablaze. The fire crackles and smokes, sending up a scent that's earthy and ancient, a smell that somehow means full in a way nothing else does. You stand close, warming your hands, watching sparks rise into the darkening sky like tiny stars trying to find their way home. The change happens gradually, then all at once. One day the trees are green and full, heavy with summer's growth. The next day, or so it seems, they're transformed, each leaf turning colour according to some internal clock that knows when the season has shifted. The maples turn first, their leaves becoming red so vivid it looks artificial. The oaks follow with their oranges and browns. The birches go yellow, bright as sunshine. Walking down your street becomes like walking through a painting, every house framed by natural glory. The leaves begin to fall in earnest after the first real cold snap, that morning when you wake to find frost on the grass and your breath visible in the air. They come down in waves, accumulating in drifts against fences and foundations, collecting in corners where the wind deposits them. Your lawn disappears beneath a blanket of colour, and your father announces, looking at it with resignation, that this weekend is for raking. The rakes come out of the garage, wooden handles worn smooth by years of use, metal tines splayed from encounters with rocks and roots. Your father takes the big rake, you get the smaller one, and together you begin the work of gathering fall. The leaves are crispy and loud, making satisfying sounds as the rake teeth pull them into piles. Some are still damp from morning dew and stick together. Others are dry as paper and float away when you try to move them, forcing you to chase after escapees. The pile grows at the curb, becoming mountainous. This is the traditional spot where everyone in the neighbourhood deposits their leaves for the city to collect, though that collection seems to happen on a schedule known only to the sanitation department. You and your siblings can't resist jumping into the pile, destroying in seconds what took an hour to build. Your father sighs but doesn't stop you, understanding that some temptations are too powerful to resist. That childhood means occasionally choosing joy over efficiency. When the yard is clear and the pile complete, your father looks at it with satisfaction, then goes to the garage for matches. The neighbourhood has a tacit agreement about leaf burning. Everyone does it on roughly the same few weeks in fall, and the smell of burning leaves becomes the area's defining characteristic. It's technically legal, though that will change in a few years as air quality concerns rise. But for now, it's simply what you do with leaves. Your father crouches beside the pile, strikes a match, and touches it to the driest leaves he can find. The fire catches slowly at first, smoking more than burning, sending up white clouds that smell like autumn distilled into aerosol form. Then the flames find purchase, and the pile begins to burn in earnest, small flames licking up through the layers, growing bolder as more leaves catch. You stand in a loose circle around the fire, your family and sometimes neighbours who've wandered over, drawn by the smoke and the primitive satisfaction of watching something burn. The heat is welcome as the evening cools, and you turn slowly like a rotisserie chicken, warming front and back equally. Your face gets hot while your back stays cold, and you shift position constantly, chasing comfort. The fire pops and crackles, occasionally sending up showers of sparks that rise into the dimming sky before winking out. The smoke drifts across the street, carrying that distinctive scent that will cling to your clothes and hair. Other fires burn up and down the block, their smoke mingling, creating a haze that softens the streetlights and makes the whole neighbourhood look dreamlike. Your father tends the fire with a rake, pushing unburned edges toward the centre, keeping it contained and controlled. This isn't a wildfire or a bonfire, it's a domestic fire, carefully managed, serving a specific purpose. But there's something primal about it anyway, something that speaks to ancient human instincts about fire and community in the changing seasons. As darkness falls completely, the fire burns down to coals, glowing red and orange, pulsing with heat but no longer flaming. Your father spreads it thin to let it die safely, and eventually declares it done. You head inside smelling like smoke, your face wind-burned and your hands cold despite the fire. Fall has officially arrived, and the neighbourhood smells like burning leaves, and everything feels exactly as it should. Christmas in the 50s is a quieter affair than what comes later, less frantic, less commercial, more rooted in tradition and the simple joy of being together. The decorations go up the weekend after Thanksgiving, never before, and they're modest by modern standards. A wreath on the door, lights strung along the eaves, a tree that your father cuts down himself from a lot on the edge of town. The tree stands in the living room, filling the house with the scent of pine, and the family gathers to decorate it with ornaments that have been passed down through generations, delicate glass balls and wooden figures and strands of tinsel that catch the light. Christmas Eve is spent at church, singing carols in a sanctuary lit by candlelight, and Christmas morning is spent at home, opening presents that were chosen with care and wrapped with love. There's a sense of wonder to it all, a feeling that this day, this season, is something special, something sacred, something worth slowing down for. The season officially begins on Thanksgiving night, after the dishes are washed and the leftovers put away, when your father makes his annual announcement that tomorrow he'll get the decorations down from the attic. There's a ritual to this, a progression of steps that never varies. The decorations live in boxes labelled in your mother's neat handwriting, and bringing them down feels like welcoming old friends back for their yearly visit. The tree doesn't come until the second weekend of December, because a tree brought home too early will be brown and dropping needles by Christmas, and that's considered bad luck or bad planning or possibly both. Your father takes you and your siblings to the tree lot, where rows of pines and firs lean against wooden frames, filling the air with their clean green scent. He evaluates trees with the seriousness of someone choosing a car, checking for bare spots, testing branch strength, standing back to assess shape and symmetry. You lobby for the biggest tree, the one that would barely fit in the living room, but your father chooses something more modest, something that will look right in the space available. Getting the tree home is an adventure in itself. Strapping it to the car's roof, driving slowly so it won't slide off, wrestling it through the front door without knocking too many needles loose. Your father saws off the bottom few inches and sets the tree in the stand, a contraption of screws and water reservoir that requires patience and occasional profanity to get right. Your mother watches and offers suggestions that your father pretends not to hear while following them precisely. The tree stands bare for a day, letting its branches relax and settle, drinking water that your father checks and refills obsessively. Then comes decorating night, when the boxes of ornaments come out and the family gathers to dress the tree. Your mother unwraps each ornament carefully, removing tissue paper that's been folded and refolded 100 times. Some ornaments are older than you, older than your parents, passed down from grandparents who are now just photographs on the mantel. They're fragile, requiring gentle handling, and each one carries a story that your mother tells while hanging it on a branch she's deemed appropriate. The lights go on first, big coloured bulbs that get hot to the touch, strung around the tree in spirals that your father insists must be evenly spaced. Then the ornaments, distributed so that no one area is too heavy or bare. Finally the tinsel, applied one strand at a time by your mother, who believes that throwing tinsel defeats its purpose. You and your siblings are less patient, draping handfuls at once, creating clumps and bare spots that your mother will later redistribute when she thinks no one's watching. The wreath on the front door is fresh pine, decorated with a red velvet bow that your mother ties herself. The lights along the eaves are white, simple, turned on each evening at dusk and off before bed. A schedule your father maintains with military precision. Inside, the mantel holds candles and pine boughs, and your mother sets out her collection of ceramic Christmas village houses, tiny buildings with lights inside that glow through painted windows. Christmas Eve means church, the one service each year where the sanctuary is completely full, everyone dressed in their best, children fidgeting in wool and velvet. The service is candlelit, and at the end, everyone holds a lit candle and sings Silent Night while the regular lights are dimmed. You hold your candle carefully, watching the flame, feeling the warmth on your face, and for a few minutes, everything feels sacred and still. Christmas morning starts early, too early, with you and your siblings awake before dawn, creeping downstairs to see if Santa came. The presents under the tree are wrapped in paper that will be carefully saved and reused next year, tied with ribbons that will go in a drawer for future occasions. Your parents appear eventually, your father carrying his camera to document the morning, your mother already thinking about the ham she'll need to get in the oven. The presents are opened slowly, one person at a time, so everyone can see what everyone else received, so the pleasure can be stretched and savoured. You get practical things you need, clothes and shoes, mixed with special things you wanted, a new bike or a board game or a toy you've been hinting about for months. The living room fills with wrapping paper and ribbon, and someone is always assigned to stuff it all into a bag for disposal later, The day unfolds quietly after that. Relatives arriving for dinner, the house filling with conversation and laughter, and the smell of cooking food. There's no rushing, no schedule beyond the meal itself. People sit and talk, play with new toys, listen to Christmas music on the radio. The tree lights glow in the corner, the ornaments catching and reflecting them, and for one day, everything feels exactly as it should, safe and warm and together. The soda shop is where teenagers go to see and be seen, to flirt and gossip and pretend they're more grown up than they actually are. The booths are red vinyl, patched in places with duct tape, and the jukebox in the corner plays the latest hits for a nickel a song. You slide into a booth across from your date, suddenly shy, suddenly aware of how sweaty your palms are. The waitress, a tired woman who has seen this exact scene play out 1,000 times, takes your order without comment. 2 Cokes, maybe a basket of fries to share. You talk about school, about the upcoming dance, about nothing important, but somehow it all feels momentous, like every word matters. The soda is sweet and fizzy. The fries are hot and salty. And for an hour, in this booth, in this little shop, you feel like you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The soda shop occupies a corner building on Main Street, its windows fogged with condensation and decorated with hand-painted letters advertising ice cream flavours and daily specials. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of grease and sugar and teenage anxiety. The black and white checkered floor is sticky in places where spills weren't quite cleaned up properly. The counter runs along one wall, chrome-edged and topped with cracked formica, surrounded by spinning stools where solo customers perch. But the booths are where the real action happens. They line the opposite wall and fill the back area, each one a semi-private territory where dramas unfold in whispers and glances. You arrived 10 minutes early, which felt desperate but was actually strategic because it gave you time to claim a good booth and compose yourself. Now your date slides in across from you, and suddenly the space feels both too large and impossibly small. The menu is laminated and sticky, offering options you both already know by heart because you've been coming here since you were old enough to have allowance money. Malts and shakes and floats, burgers and hot dogs and grilled cheese sandwiches, French fries that arrive in red plastic baskets lined with waxed paper. Nothing costs more than $1. Most things cost considerably less. This is important because your wallet holds exactly $2.35 and you need to leave a tip. The jukebox glows in the corner, its bubble tubes rising and falling with hypnotic rhythm. Someone has already fed it coins and music fills the shop. Buddy Holly or the Platters or maybe that new Elvis song everyone's talking about. The volume is just loud enough to make conversation feel private, even though everyone can probably hear you if they tried. You lean forward slightly to better hear your date, and they lean forward too, and suddenly you're close enough to see the freckles on their nose, close enough that your knees touch under the table. The waitress returns with your order, setting down 2 Cokes in glasses beaded with condensation and a basket of fries that sends up steam. She doesn't ask if you need anything else, just tears your check from her pad and tucks it under the napkin dispenser before moving on to another booth. The efficiency of it, the casual dismissal, somehow makes you feel more adult. You're not children who need coddling. You're customers who can manage yourselves. You reach for a fry at the same time your date does, and your fingers touch briefly before you both pull back, laughing nervously. The fries are perfect, crispy outside and fluffy inside, salted just enough. You eat them slowly, making them last, because once they're gone, you'll have to decide whether to order something else or admit the evening is over. Your date talks about the math test tomorrow, and you pretend to be interested even though right now, math feels like something that exists in another universe entirely. The Coke is tooth-achingly sweet, carbonated so aggressively it makes your eyes water on the first sip. You drink it through a paper straw that starts to disintegrate partway through, forcing you to either drink faster or ask for a new straw. You choose faster, because calling the waitress back feels like admitting you don't know what you're doing. Around you, other booths hold other teenagers navigating similar moments. Two girls share a milkshake and giggle over something in a magazine. A group of boys crowd into one booth, loud and boisterous, showing off for anyone who'll watch. A couple in the corner booth are holding hands on top of the table, bold in their certainty, while you and your date keep your hands carefully to yourselves. The evening passes in a blur of small talk and stolen glances. You learn that your date wants to be a teacher or maybe a nurse. They haven't decided yet. They learn that you're thinking about college, or the military, or maybe just getting a job after graduation. You both agree that high school feels like it's lasting forever and ending too soon. The conversation loops and wanders, finding its rhythm, becoming easier as the minutes pass. When the fries are finally gone and the Cokes are nothing but ice and diluted syrup, you check the bill and count out exact change, adding an extra quarter for the tip. You slide out of the booth and your date follows, and together you walk to the door, back out into the evening air that feels cool after the warmth of the shop. You've been on a date, a real date, and somehow you survived it without saying anything too stupid or spilling anything on yourself. You walk your date home, hands brushing occasionally, already planning when you might do this again. Dinner in the 1950s isn't something you eat in front of the television or grab on your way to the next activity. It's an event, a non-negotiable gathering where the family sits down together and shares a meal and, if they're lucky, a conversation. The table is set properly, plates and silverware in their designated spots, glasses filled with milk or water. Your mother brings out the food she's been preparing all afternoon, pot roast and mashed potatoes, green beans and dinner rolls, simple food made with care. Your father says grace, a brief prayer of thanks, and then the meal begins. You pass dishes back and forth, serving yourselves, talking about your day. Your father asks about school, your mother shares news from the neighbourhood, your siblings argue about something trivial. And for 30 minutes, maybe 40 if the conversation is good, you're all together, a family, connected in a way that feels both ordinary and irreplaceable. The dining room exists for this purpose and almost no other. It sits between the kitchen and the living room, a formal space that gets used exactly once per day. The table is wooden, solid, large enough to seat 6 comfortably. The chairs match, their seats covered in fabric that your mother chose years ago and has protected with clear plastic covers that make embarrassing sounds when you shift position. The good dishes come out for Sunday dinner, but weeknights mean the everyday plates, sturdy things that can withstand being dropped, which happens more often than anyone admits. Your mother has been cooking since late afternoon, moving between stove and counter with the choreography of someone who's prepared this meal hundreds of times. The pot roast has been braising for hours, filling the house with the smell of meat and onions and something savoury that makes your stomach rumble with anticipation. The potatoes were peeled at the sink, boiled until tender, then mashed with butter and milk until they're fluffy and smooth. The green beans came from a can, but she's doctored them with bacon fat and onion, transforming them into something better than they have any right to be. The dinner rolls are store-bought, still warm from being heated in the oven, and they sit in a basket lined with a dish towel. The butter dish holds a stick cut into pats, softened just enough to spread. There's no fancy presentation, no garnish or arrangement designed to impress. This is food meant to nourish, to fill, to bring people together around the basic human need to eat. Your father sits at the head of the table, still in his work clothes, though he's loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. He bows his head, and the rest of you follow, and he speaks the same grace he's spoken every night for as long as you can remember, thanking God for the food and asking blessing for the family. It's quick, rote, but somehow still meaningful, A pause between the chaos of the day and the comfort of the meal. Then the food begins its circuit around the table. Your father serves himself first, taking generous portions because he's worked all day and believes he's earned them. The platter of pot roast makes its way around, each person spearing a slice, spooning gravy over it. The bowl of mashed potatoes follows, heavy and hot. The green beans, the rolls. Everyone takes what they want, what they need, and the table fills with the sounds of serving spoons against dishes, of glasses being set down, of chairs scraping slightly as people settle in. The conversation starts slowly. Your father asks about school, and you tell him about the history test you think you passed, about the book report that's due next week. Your mother mentions that Mrs. Henderson is having surgery next month, and the church ladies are organising meals for her family. Your sister complains that your brother borrowed her pencil and didn't return it. Your brother denies this with the outrage of someone who definitely borrowed the pencil. Your mother referees the pencil dispute, while simultaneously monitoring everyone's plates, noting who's not eating their vegetables, who's reaching for a third roll, who looks tired or troubled or needs a second helping. Her attention is divided but complete, tracking 6 different things at once the way she always does. The food is simple but satisfying, the kind of meal that's more about comfort than culinary achievement. The pot roast is tender enough to cut with a fork. The potatoes are buttery and rich. The green beans are salty and slightly greasy in the way that makes them taste better than steamed vegetables ever could. The rolls are soft and warm, perfect for sopping up gravy. As plates empty and the initial hunger fades, the conversation deepens. Your father talks about work, about the new contract his company's bidding on, about the co-worker who's retiring after 30 years. Your mother shares neighbourhood news, the everyday intelligence that keeps the family connected to the community around them. You and your siblings chime in with stories and observations, and for these minutes, everyone is present, attentive, part of something larger than themselves. When the meal ends, your father pushes back from the table with a satisfied sigh. Your mother begins collecting plates, and you and your siblings help carrying dishes to the kitchen where they'll be washed and dried and put away, ready for tomorrow's meal. The dining room empties, returns to being a formal space waiting for its next use. But something lingers, some sense of connection and completion. The knowledge that today, like every day, the family came together and shared more than just food. The high school dance is a rite of passage, a night when the gymnasium transforms into something almost magical. Streamers hanging from the ceiling, balloons clustered in the corners, a record player spinning in the corner. The boys stand awkwardly on one side of the room, hands in their pockets, trying to work up the courage to ask someone to dance. The girls cluster on the other side, whispering and giggling and pretending they don't notice the boys noticing them. When someone finally crosses the invisible line and asks for a dance, it feels like a small miracle. You shuffle awkwardly across the floor, trying to remember the steps, trying not to step on toes, hyper-aware of the warmth of another person's hand in yours. The music is loud but not deafening. The lights are dim but not too dim. And for a few hours the adult world feels close enough to touch, exciting and terrifying in equal measure. The transformation of the gym begins that afternoon, when volunteers arrive with ladders and boxes of decorations. The basketball hoops are cranked up to the ceiling, out of sight and mind. The bleachers are pushed back against the walls. Crepe paper streamers in the school colours get twisted and hung from the rafters, creating a canopy that hides the industrial lighting and makes the space feel almost festive. Someone has borrowed a mirror ball from somewhere, and it hangs in the centre of the ceiling, ready to scatter light across the walls when the time comes. You arrive at 7, hair carefully combed, wearing clothes that feel simultaneously too formal and not formal enough. The entrance fee is 50 cents, collected at a folding table by Mrs. Morrison, the English teacher who's been assigned chaperone duty and looks like she'd rather be anywhere else. She takes your money, stamps your hand with ink that probably won't wash off for days, and waves you inside. The gym is already half full, but everyone is pressed against the walls, leaving the centre floor empty and intimidating. The girls have claimed the bleachers on one side, sitting in tight groups, their dresses carefully arranged to avoid wrinkling. The boys stand in loose clusters on the opposite side, trying to look casual, occasionally punching each other's shoulders for no apparent reason. The dividing line between the two groups might as well be a national border. The music starts before anyone is ready for it, a slow song that seems designed to maximize awkwardness. Everyone looks at everyone else, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to be first onto the floor. The chaperones watch with amusement and perhaps sympathy, remembering their own teenage years, their own nervous first dances. Finally, Bobby Martinez crosses the divide, walking with exaggerated confidence towards Sarah Chen. He asks her to dance. She says yes. They walk to the centre of the floor together, and suddenly there are two people dancing in a space meant for 200. They sway back and forth, barely moving, and everyone watches them with a mixture of admiration and relief that someone else went first. This breaks the spell. Other boys find their courage. Other girls say yes. The floor begins to fill, couples forming and reforming, the invisible wall between genders finally breached. You watch for a few more minutes, gathering your nerve, then walk towards someone you've been working up courage about for weeks. You ask. They say yes. And suddenly you're on the floor too, one hand on a waist, the other holding a hand, trying to remember which foot moves when. The dancing is less coordinated than anyone hoped. You step on their foot. They step on yours. You apologize. They laugh. You find a rhythm that's not exactly what the music is doing, but works for you. The record changes to something faster, which is both relief and new challenge. Fast dancing means less physical contact, but requires actual movement, and neither of you is entirely sure what to do. You improvise something that might be dancing, or might be mild spasms, and it doesn't matter because everyone else is doing the same thing. The chaperones patrol the edges of the floor, making sure no one gets too close during slow songs, that the lights stay bright enough to discourage anything inappropriate. They break up couples who are holding each other too tight, send girls with lipstick too red to the bathroom to tone it down, confiscate cigarettes from boys who thought they could sneak smoke in the bathroom. They're not trying to ruin anyone's fun, just keeping things within the boundaries that parents expect and the school requires. The refreshment table offers punch that's probably just fruit juice and ginger ale, and cookies that someone's mother baked this afternoon. You take a break between songs, pour yourself a cup, drink it too fast, and immediately regret it when the sugar and carbonation combine to make you slightly nauseated. Your date appears beside you, flushed and happy, and suggests you go back out for the next song. The evening passes in a blur of music and movement and moments that feel significant even when nothing particularly significant is happening. You dance with different people. You stand with friends and watch other people dance. You laugh at the chaperones trying to demonstrate proper dance position. You sing along to the songs everyone knows. And slowly, gradually, the gym stops feeling like a gym and starts feeling like exactly what it's supposed to be. A place where teenagers test out adulthood in safe, supervised doses. When the dance ends at 10 and the lights come up to full brightness, the magic dissipates instantly. The gym is just a gym again, now littered with paper cups and deflated balloons. Everyone files out into the parking lot, where parents wait in cars, headlights cutting through the darkness. You say goodbye to your date, promise to see them at school Monday, and climb into your father's car. He asks if you had fun. You say yes, and you mean it. The high school dance, that peculiar institution, has done its job, giving you a few hours of grown-up feeling in a world still mostly run by adults. Life in a 50s suburb moves to the rhythm of the seasons in a way that feels both predictable and deeply comforting. Spring means planting gardens and washing windows and airing out houses that have been sealed up all winter. Summer means long days and short nights, swimming pools and barbecues and the constant hum of lawn mowers. Fall means school starting again, leaves changing, the first bite of cold in the morning air. Winter means snow shoveling and hot cocoa, and the way the whole neighbourhood goes quiet under a fresh blanket of white. There's a pattern to it all, a cycle that repeats year after year, and within that cycle you know where you stand. You know what's coming. You know your place in the world, and there's a security in that, a sense of order that makes everything else feel manageable. Spring arrives not on a calendar date, but when Mrs. Chen's crocuses push through the last patches of snow, purple and white and yellow, small declarations of hope. Your mother opens every window in the house, letting in air that still carries winter's chill but promises warmth to come. She washes curtains that have hung undisturbed for months. She beats rugs on the clothesline, releasing clouds of dust that sparkle in the sunshine. The whole neighbourhood undergoes this same ritual, this collective shaking off of winter's weight. Your father tills the garden, turning over soil that's been frozen solid for months. The earth is dark and rich, smelling of things growing and decaying in equal measure. He plants seeds in careful rows, marking each with popsicle sticks labelled in your mother's handwriting. Tomatoes, beans, lettuce, carrots. The garden is both practical, providing food that will fill canning jars in the basement, and therapeutic, giving your father something to tend besides his job and his family. The rains come, persistent and grey, turning lawns green overnight. Gutters overflow, basements leak. Everyone complains about the mud tracked through their houses, but secretly they're grateful because rain means growth, means the drought won't come this year, means the harvest will be good. Children splash through puddles in rubber boots. Earthworms emerge and get stranded on sidewalks. The world smells clean and new. Summer hits like a hammer, one day merely warm, the next oppressively hot. Sprinklers appear on every lawn, running morning and evening, wasting water in ways that future generations will find shocking. Fans run constantly in bedroom windows, pulling in cooler night air, pushing out the day's accumulated heat. People move slower, talk less, retreat to shaded porches and air-conditioned movie theatres. The rhythm of life adjusts to the heat, everyone doing what must be done, and postponing everything else until September. The swimming pool opens for the season, and children spend entire days there, skin turning brown, hair turning green from chlorine, returning home exhausted and waterlogged. Fathers barbecue every weekend, standing over smoking grills in their backyards, wielding spatulas and drinking beer, comparing techniques and secret sauce recipes. Mothers serve potato salad and watermelon and corn on the cob. Nights are for catching fireflies and playing kick the can until the streetlights come on. Fall arrives with relief, the heat finally breaking, the air turning crisp. School starts with new shoes and freshly sharpened pencils, and optimism that this year will be different, better, easier than the last. The football team practices on the high school field, their pads clacking, their coaches shouting. Friday night lights become the centre of social life. Everyone goes to the games, not because they care deeply about football, but because it's what you do, where you see everyone, where community happens. The leaves turn and fall, requiring endless raking. Pumpkins appear on porches. Your mother makes apple pie from fruit picked at an orchard 20 miles out of town. Halloween comes with homemade costumes and pillowcases for trick-or-treating, and you walk the neighborhood in groups, trusting that every door will open, that everyone will have candy, that you're safe in the darkness because you know these streets, these houses, these people. Winter descends quietly at first, then all at once. The first snow is magical, transforming everything into a Christmas card. Children make angels and snowmen. Sleds appear from garage corners. The hill at the end of Park Street becomes a sledding run worn slick by dozens of bodies sliding down it. Your father shovels the driveway before work and again when he comes home, a Sisyphean task he accepts without complaint. The house closes in on itself, windows sealed, storm doors installed, heat rattling through registers in the floor. The kitchen stays warm from constant cooking, from pots of soup simmering on the stove, from the oven running at least once a day. Laundry dries on racks indoors, filling the air with dampness. The television gets more attention because outdoor play is limited by cold and early darkness. But there's coziness to winter too, a sense of hibernation that feels earned after the activity of the other seasons. The family gathers in the living room after dinner, playing board games or reading or just sitting together. The world outside might be frozen and dark, but inside everything is warm and light and safe. And then the cycle begins again, spring returning, the whole pattern repeating, reliable as clockwork, comforting in its predictability. You know what's coming, you know what to expect. The seasons turn, life continues, and you're held in the rhythm of it all, part of something larger than yourself, something that was here before you and will be here after, steady and sure. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your blankets, the soft kind, not the scratchy wool studio issue ones celebrities use to pretend were luxury, let's take a breath and look back at the day we just walked through together in 1955. You woke up to the smell of coffee percolating. You walked to school on sidewalks where neighbours knew your name. You played until the streetlights came on. You sat down to dinner with your family, everyone together, no devices, no distractions, just the simple act of sharing a meal and a moment. You were held by a community that noticed when you were there and noticed when you weren't. For all its imperfections, and there were many, this era understood something we're still trying to remember. That ordinary life, lived with attention and care, is enough. That knowing your neighbours matters. That sitting on a porch and watching the evening arrive is not wasted time. That the rhythm of seasons and rituals and small repeated kindnesses creates a foundation strong enough to hold everything else. The people who lived this life didn't think of themselves as special. They were just waking up, making coffee, raking leaves, raising children, showing up for each other in the 1,000 small ways that community requires. They weren't performing nostalgia. They were living, as messy and complicated and human as living has always been. So as you drift towards sleep tonight, maybe carry something small from that world into yours. Notice a neighbour. Slow down for a meal. Sit on your porch if you have one. Let a moment be a moment instead of rushing toward the next thing. History isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a screen door and a radio and someone who remembers your name. And that is enough. That has always been enough. Sleep well, and may your dreams be gentler than the world sometimes is, filled with the warm glow of kitchen windows and the sound of children laughing in the distance, safe and home before dark. Good night. Or